"Why didn't you let me die?" she whispered. And the cowboy finally understood her pain. The land was quiet in a way that only wide open places can be. Miles of dry earth stretched under the dark sky, broken only by fences, a few scattered trees, and an old wooden ranch house standing alone against the wind. This was the cowboy's world. He had lived here for years, waking before sunrise, working until his body ached, and sleeping with the calm that came from routine. Life had taught him to expect little and give much. He did not ask many questions, and he did not talk much either. People in nearby towns knew him as a man who helped when help was needed, then returned to his land without expecting thanks. That night the sky was restless. Clouds moved fast, covering the moon again and again. The wind carried the smell of rain, sharp and cold. The cowboy had just finished checking the horses when he noticed something unusual near the far edge of his ranch. At first, it looked like a dark shape lying in the grass, unmoving. He told himself it was probably nothing, an animal, a fallen branch, or his tired eyes playing tricks on him. Still, something inside him refused to let it go. He walked closer, boots crunching softly against the ground. With every step, the shape became clearer. It was not an animal, it was a person. A woman lay there, her clothes torn and dirty, her body still as if the land had swallowed her. The cowboy's heart tightened. He knelt beside her, careful but quick. She was breathing, but barely. Her face was pale, her lips dry, and there were marks on her arms that told a story he could not yet understand. She did not respond when he spoke to her, not even when he gently touched her shoulder. For a brief moment, he hesitated. Bringing a stranger into his home was not simple. Life had taught him caution, but leaving her there was not an option, not for him. He had been raised to believe that if you could help, you did. No excuses. He lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she felt, as if the world had already taken too much from her. Rain began to fall as he carried her back toward the house, each drop cold against his skin. By the time he reached the door, his shirt was soaked, and his arms trembled, not from effort, but from the weight of responsibility he now carried. Inside, the house was warm and dimly lit. He laid her on the small bed near the fireplace, wrapped her in a clean blanket, and checked her injuries as best he could. He was no doctor, but years on the ranch had taught him how to clean wounds and care for pain. He worked quietly, focused, speaking only when necessary, even though she could not hear him. Hours passed. The storm outside grew louder, thunder shaking the walls, but inside the house, time seemed to slow. The cowboy sat nearby, watching her chest rise and fall. Every shallow breath felt like a question. Would she live? Would she wake? And if she did, what would she say? Near morning, she finally stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, filled with confusion and fear. She tried to move, then stopped, wincing. The cowboy spoke gently, telling her she was safe, that she was on his ranch. She stared at him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to decide whether to believe him. She did not thank him. She did not ask where she was. She turned her face away and closed her eyes again. The cowboy was not offended. He had seen many kinds of pain in his life. Some people cried, some shouted, some stayed silent. Silence, he knew, could be the loudest of all. Over the next few days, he took care of her the best he could. He brought water, simple food, and fresh clothes. He spoke little, giving her space, letting her rest. She ate only when necessary and spoke even less. When she did speak, it was in short, careful words, as if each one cost her something. He noticed things. The way she stiffened when he moved too suddenly. The way her hands shook when night came. The way she stared out the window for long moments, not really seeing the land beyond it. It was clear that whatever had brought her to his ranch was not just an accident. It was the end of something heavy. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft orange light, the cowboy asked her a simple question. He asked her name. She looked at him for a long time before answering. When she finally did, her voice was quiet, almost empty. She gave him a name, but it felt distant, like something she no longer belonged to. He nodded and did not push further. That night, as he lay awake listening to the wind, doubt crept into his thoughts. Had he done the right thing? Saving a life seemed simple in the moment, but now he wondered if he had stepped into a pain he could not fix. He had rescued her body, but her eyes told him her spirit was somewhere far away. The next morning he found her sitting outside on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the land. The sun was warm, the world calm, but her expression did not match the peace around her. He stood nearby, unsure of what to say. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," she said suddenly without looking at him. "You didn't," he replied simply. She gave a small, sad smile that faded quickly. The silence returned, thick and heavy. Days passed like this. No arguments, no drama. Just two broken lives sharing the same space in different ways. The cowboy continued his work, and she slowly gained strength, but something in her remained distant. He could sense it. It was like trying to reach someone standing behind a thick wall. He began to understand that her presence on his land was not a coincidence. Something had brought her here, to the edge of life, to a place where someone like him would find her. He did not yet know what lesson awaited him, but he felt it coming. One night, as the stars filled the sky and the land rested in silence, the cowboy sat alone by the fire. He thought about how easy it was to believe that doing the right thing always brought peace. Sometimes it brought questions instead. Sometimes it brought pain you had to learn to carry. In saving her, he had changed both their lives. He just did not know how yet. And somewhere inside the quiet house, the woman lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering why she was still breathing, and why a stranger had decided she should live. Morning light entered the ranch house softly, slipping through the thin curtains and touching the wooden floor. The cowboy was already awake. He always was. Years of ranch life had trained his body to rise before the sun, even when there was no one else around. He moved quietly, careful not to wake the woman. He did not know why he cared so much about small sounds, but he did. Maybe it was because she seemed to live on the edge of fear, as if even a simple noise could push her away from the world again. When he stepped outside to begin his work, the land greeted him with its usual calm. Horses waited to be fed, fences needed checking, and the wind carried the dry smell of earth. Everything was normal, yet nothing felt the same. For the first time in many years, his home was not empty, and still it felt full of silence. Inside the house, the woman slowly opened her eyes. She had slept, but not deeply. Her dreams were heavy, filled with broken moments and memories she could not escape. She lay still for a long time, listening. The sounds of the ranch drifted in: boots on wood, a door opening, animals moving. It felt strange to be somewhere quiet without danger hiding in every corner. She sat up carefully, her body still sore but stronger than before. The blanket slipped from her shoulders, and she wrapped it back around herself, as if it was the only thing holding her together. She did not feel like a guest. She felt like someone passing through a place she did not belong. When the cowboy returned later with breakfast, he placed the food on the table without a word. It was simple: bread, fruit, and a warm drink. She watched him from the corner of her eye, unsure of what to say. She was not used to kindness that asked for nothing in return. "Eat," he said gently. "You need strength." She nodded and obeyed, though hunger was not what pushed her to take the food. It was the calm in his voice. It did not carry pity or control, just concern. As the days passed, a pattern formed. He worked outside. She stayed inside or sat on the porch, watching the land stretch endlessly before her. They spoke only when needed. Sometimes a short question, sometimes a brief answer. Their conversations were like small steps taken carefully, afraid that one wrong move might cause everything to fall apart. The cowboy noticed how she avoided mirrors, how she kept her arms crossed, protecting herself even when she was alone. He noticed how her eyes followed every movement, always alert, always ready. At night, he sometimes heard her moving in her sleep, breathing fast, whispering words he could not understand. Once, he found her standing by the window long after midnight, staring into the darkness. "You should rest," he said quietly, not wanting to startle her. "I know," she replied. "Sleep doesn't always listen." He nodded. He understood that more than she knew. She never asked him questions about himself, and he did not push his story on her. But slowly, without planning it, small truths began to appear. One evening, while she sat at the table tracing lines in the wood with her finger, she asked him why he lived so far from people. "Peace," he answered after a moment, "and less noise." She smiled slightly. "Noise can be loud even when no one is talking." That surprised him. He looked at her, really looked at her, and realized how sharp her understanding was. She was not weak. She was tired. Her body healed faster than her heart. The cuts faded. The bruises lightened. But the heaviness inside her stayed the same. Some days she barely spoke at all. Other days she seemed almost normal, even laughing quietly at something small, only to pull back into herself moments later. The cowboy struggled to understand what she needed. He was used to problems he could fix with his hands: a broken fence, a sick horse. This was different. This was pain with no clear shape. One afternoon, a neighbor stopped by unexpectedly. The cowboy felt tension rise the moment he heard another voice near the house. He saw it in the woman too. Her shoulders stiffened and her eyes filled with fear. She stepped back into the house without a word. After the neighbor left, the cowboy found her sitting on the bed, breathing slowly, trying to calm herself. "You're safe," he said. "I know," she replied, but her voice trembled. "I just don't like surprises." He respected that. From then on, he warned her before anyone came near the ranch. It was a small thing, but it mattered. One evening, while sitting outside watching the sky change colors, she finally spoke more than a few sentences. "I didn't plan to end up here," she said. "I figured," he answered. She looked at him, then back at the land. "I wasn't running toward anything. I was running away." He did not ask from what. He sensed that pushing would close her off again. Instead, he said, "Sometimes that's how roads work." She nodded, tears filling her eyes, though none fell. "I didn't expect anyone to find me." "That makes two of us," he said honestly. Silence followed, but it was different this time. Softer, less heavy. That night the cowboy sat alone and thought deeply. He had saved her without thinking. Now he realized that staying might be harder than rescuing. Anyone could lift someone from the ground. Not everyone could stay and face the pain that came with it. The woman lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. Her thoughts moved in circles. She wondered why he had not asked her to leave, why he didn't treat her like a problem, why his kindness made her feel uncomfortable instead of grateful. Kindness reminded her of everything she had lost. Days continued to pass, steady and quiet. Slowly she began to help with small tasks: washing dishes, sweeping the floor, feeding the animals under his watchful eye. These actions gave her a sense of purpose, even if she did not admit it. But inside, a storm was building. The more her body healed, the closer she came to facing the truth she had tried to escape. Being alive meant remembering. And remembering hurt. The cowboy could feel the tension growing. He did not know what would come next, but he knew this silence could not last forever. Something inside her was reaching its limit. And when it finally broke, he would have to face a truth he was not prepared for, one that would change how he understood saving a life forever. The change did not happen all at once. It came quietly, like a crack forming in glass. The cowboy noticed it before she ever spoke a word. She moved more slowly. She sat alone longer. Her eyes, which had started to soften just a little, now carried a deep weight again. It was as if something inside her was pushing to come out, and the longer it stayed hidden, the heavier it became. One evening, the sky was painted in dull gray colors. No rain fell, but the air felt heavy, like the land itself was holding its breath. The cowboy finished his work early and returned to the house. He expected to find her on the porch or inside, but she was nowhere in sight. A quiet worry settled in his chest. He walked around the ranch, calling her name once, then again. No answer. His steps grew faster as his eyes searched the familiar land. Finally, he saw her near the old fence at the far end of the property. She stood still, staring at the open land beyond, her back to him. He slowed down, careful not to scare her. "You shouldn't be this far alone," he said gently. She did not turn around. "I know." They stood there in silence, the wind brushing past them. The land stretched endlessly ahead, empty and wide. After a long moment, she spoke again. "This place," she said, "it feels like the edge of the world." He nodded. "Sometimes it is." She took a deep breath, then another. Her hands were shaking. The cowboy could see it clearly now. Whatever she had been holding back was breaking through. They returned to the house without another word. Inside, the fire was lit, filling the room with warmth and soft light. The cowboy poured 2 cups of warm tea and placed one near her. She did not touch it. He waited. He had learned that waiting mattered. Finally she spoke, her voice low and unsteady. "I didn't come here by accident." "I figured that too," he said quietly. She looked up at him then, and for the first time she did not look away. Her eyes were full, not with tears, but with years of pain that had never been given space to breathe. "I lost everything," she said. "Not all at once, little by little, and that made it worse." The words came slowly at first, then faster, like a door opening after being locked for too long. She spoke about trust that had been broken, about promises that meant nothing, about waking up each day feeling smaller than the day before. She spoke of being surrounded by people yet feeling completely alone. The cowboy listened. He did not interrupt. He did not try to fix anything. He simply stayed where he was, grounded and still. "I kept telling myself to be strong," she continued. "People say that word like it's easy, like strength means staying quiet and not complaining, so I did that. I stayed quiet for a long time." Her hands tightened in her lap. "And no one noticed, or maybe they noticed and didn't care." The room felt heavy but not uncomfortable. It felt honest. "I didn't want attention," she said. "I just wanted the pain to stop." The cowboy felt something shift inside him. He had helped many people in his life, but he had never heard pain spoken this way. Calm, clear, tired. She swallowed hard, her voice breaking for the first time. "That night when you found me, I wasn't trying to be saved." The words hung in the air. He did not move. He did not speak. She took a shaky breath and whispered the words that had been sitting in her chest like a stone. "Why didn't you let me die?" The cowboy felt the question hit him deeper than any wound he had ever known. Not because it shocked him, but because he finally understood. Saving her had not felt like rescue to her. It had felt like interruption. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The fire cracked softly, the only sound in the room. "I didn't know," he said finally, his voice low. "I didn't know how much pain you were carrying." She looked down, tears finally falling. "No one ever does." He stood up slowly and walked to the window, needing a moment to steady himself. He had always believed that saving a life was the greatest good. Now he realized that sometimes life could feel like a burden instead of a gift. When he turned back to her, his expression was different, softer, wiser. "I won't pretend I understand everything," he said, "but I know this much. Pain doesn't mean your life has no value." She shook her head. "You don't get it. I wasn't brave. I was tired." "I do get that," he replied. "Being tired doesn't make you weak." She looked at him again, surprised. He sat down across from her. "I've lost people too," he said. "Not the same way, not the same pain, but I know what it's like to wake up and feel empty." He told her about his own past, about loss that had pushed him toward silence, about choosing land and distance because it was easier than dealing with people. He admitted that helping others had been his way of avoiding his own pain. They sat there, two people finally standing in the same truth. "I didn't save you because I thought life was perfect," he said. "I saved you because I couldn't walk away." She listened quietly. I don't expect you to be grateful," he continued, "and I won't tell you how to feel. But I'm here. If you choose to stay, I'll stay too." The woman cried then, not loudly but deeply, not from sadness alone but from being seen without judgment. For the first time since she had arrived, she did not feel alone in her pain. Later that night, she lay in bed, exhausted in a new way. Speaking the truth had hurt, but it had also lifted something from her chest. She still felt broken, but now someone else knew where the cracks were. The cowboy sat by the fire long after she had gone to sleep. Her question echoed in his mind again and again. Why didn't you let me die? He finally understood that saving someone's body was only the beginning. Real help meant staying, listening, and accepting pain without trying to erase it. That night changed both of them. For her, it was the first time her pain had been heard. For him, it was the moment he learned that understanding mattered more than heroism. And though neither of them knew it yet, this moment would become the turning point, the place where survival slowly began to turn into something else. The days after that night felt different. Not lighter, not easier, but more honest. The house was still quiet, the land still wide and empty, yet something between them had changed. The truth had been spoken, and once words like those are released, they cannot be taken back. They sit in the air, asking to be respected. The woman woke up later than usual the next morning. When she stepped out of the room, she paused, unsure of what she would find. The cowboy was at the table, drinking his morning tea, looking out the window. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "Morning," he said, just as he always did. Nothing in his tone suggested pity. Nothing suggested discomfort. That alone surprised her. "Morning," she replied quietly. She expected things to feel awkward, but they didn't. There was no pressure to talk about what had been said. No heavy silence either. It felt like standing after a long storm when the ground is still wet, but the sky has cleared. She sat down and ate. The cowboy returned to his routine, and for the first time, she did not feel like a fragile guest who might be asked to leave at any moment. She felt like a person who was allowed to exist without explanation. Later that day, the cowboy asked if she wanted to walk with him while he checked the fence. He did not insist. He did not look disappointed when she hesitated. "I can go alone if you'd rather rest," he said. "I'll come," she answered after a moment. They walked side by side, not too close, not too far. The land stretched endlessly around them. The sky was clear and the sun was warm on their backs. As they walked, the cowboy explained small things about the ranch, which fences needed fixing, which horses were calm and which ones were stubborn. He spoke the way someone speaks when they are not trying to impress, just sharing. She listened, finding comfort in the simple details. "You don't have to talk," he said at one point. "I know some days are heavier than others." She nodded. "Thank you for not pushing." "I've learned," he replied. "People open up when they're ready, not when they're told to." That mattered to her more than he knew. Over the next weeks, he changed how he helped her. He stopped trying to cheer her up. He stopped offering answers she hadn't asked for. Instead, he offered choices. Did she want company or space? Did she want to help or rest? Each question gave her something she had lost long ago: control. Some days she talked. Other days she didn't. On quiet days, he respected her silence. On talking days, he listened without interrupting. He never told her how strong she was. He never told her to move on. He treated her pain as something real, not something to be erased. One afternoon, while repairing a broken fence, the cowboy slipped and hurt his hand. It wasn't serious, but it was enough to make him stop and sit down. She rushed toward him without thinking, concern written clearly on her face. "Are you okay?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "I'll live." She cleaned the cut carefully, her hand steady. When she was done, she realized something surprising. Helping him did not drain her. It made her feel useful, needed, human. "You don't always have to be the one saving others," she said quietly. He looked at her, thoughtful. "Neither do you." That moment stayed with both of them. At night, the woman still struggled. The quiet made memories louder, but now, when sleep wouldn't come, she no longer felt trapped inside her own head. Sometimes she sat by the fire and the cowboy would join her without a word. They would sit there together, two people sharing silence, and that was enough. One night she spoke again about her past. Not everything, just pieces. The cowboy did not ask for details. He let her choose what to share. "I used to think something was wrong with me," she said softly, "that I was too sensitive, too quiet, too much trouble." He shook his head. "Some people mistake kindness for weakness." She looked at him. "You don't." "No," he said. "I think kindness is one of the hardest things to hold on to." Her eyes filled, but she did not cry. She simply nodded, holding onto that truth. The cowboy also began to change. He noticed it in small ways. He slept better. He laughed more easily. He realized that helping her had forced him to face his own habit of hiding. For years, he had buried himself in work to avoid feeling. Now he found himself talking more, remembering more, healing in ways he had not expected. One evening, while watching the sun disappear beyond the land, the woman asked him something unexpected. "Do you ever regret saving me?" He answered without hesitation. "No," she looked down. "Even after what I said?" "Yes," he said, "because now I understand. And understanding doesn't scare me." She took a deep breath. "I don't know if I'll ever be okay." He nodded. "You don't have to be, you just have to keep choosing today." Those words stayed with her. There were setbacks. Some mornings she could barely get out of bed. Some nights the old thoughts returned, whispering doubts and fears. But now, when they did, she wasn't alone with them. She had learned that pain could exist without controlling everything. One day, she stood at the same fence where she had once stared into the empty land. This time the feeling was different. The land no longer looked like an ending. It looked like space, possibility. The cowboy joined her, leaning against the fence. "Still feels like the edge of the world?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "Not anymore." They stood there, the wind moving gently around them. She had not been fixed. Her pain had not disappeared. But she had learned something important. Being alive did not mean pretending everything was fine. It meant allowing yourself to feel, to rest, to ask for help when needed. And the cowboy had learned something too. True help was not loud or heroic. It was patient. It was quiet. It stayed. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the woman felt something new settle in her chest. Not happiness, not relief, but a small, steady willingness to keep going. For the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. Time moved forward, slow and steady, like the sun rising over the land each morning. Nothing changed suddenly, but everything changed little by little. The woman began to notice it in small moments. The way she no longer woke up with fear gripping her chest every day. The way she could breathe more deeply while standing outside. The way her thoughts, once heavy and dark, now paused before pulling her down. She still had hard days. Some mornings, getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. On those days, the cowboy did not push her. He simply left the door open, letting light and fresh air come in. He would place a warm drink nearby and say nothing more. That quiet respect gave her strength. One morning, she surprised herself by waking early. The sky was just beginning to change color. She stepped outside and saw the cowboy already working, moving calmly, as if the day held no weight at all. She stood there watching him, realizing how much she had learned just by being near him. He did not rush life. He met it as it came. She walked over and offered to help. He handed her a simple task without question. No praise, no worry, just trust. As days passed, she became more involved in the ranch, feeding animals, fixing small things, learning the rhythm of the land. Her hands grew stronger. Her mind grew quieter. She began to sleep better, not because the pain was gone, but because it no longer owned every thought. One evening, while sitting on the porch, she spoke softly. "I used to think surviving was a mistake." The cowboy did not interrupt. "Now," she continued, "I think maybe surviving was a chance, not a promise, just a chance." He nodded. That's all any of us get. She looked at the land, then back at him. I still don't know where I belong. You don't have to know yet, he replied. Some answers take time. That comforted her. The season slowly changed. The air grew cooler. The land shifted colors. With each change, the woman felt herself changing too. She laughed more easily now, even if the laughter surprised her. She spoke more openly. She no longer felt ashamed of her quiet nature. One afternoon, a traveler passed near the ranch and waved. The woman felt a moment of tension, then let it pass. She noticed it and felt proud. Fear still visited her, but it no longer stayed. That night, she sat by the fire and thought about the question she had once asked. Why didn't you let me die? She understood it differently now. She realized that the question had not been about death at all. It had been about pain, about wanting the hurt to end, about feeling unseen. Now she felt seen. She spoke to the cowboy quietly. I'm glad you didn't walk away. He looked at her, thoughtful. So am I. Weeks later, she told him she was thinking about leaving one day. Not because she was running, but because she wanted to choose her own path. He smiled. That's a good reason. You won't be angry. No, he said. I'll be proud. She felt tears rise, but they were gentle tears this time. Grateful tears. When the day finally came for her to leave, it was calm. No dramatic goodbye, just two people standing on the porch. I don't know what the future holds, she said. None of us do, he replied. But I think you'll handle it. She paused, then said something she had never said before. Thank you for listening. He nodded. Thank you for trusting me. She walked away slowly, not because she was afraid, but because she wanted to remember the place that helped her breathe again. The cowboy watched until she disappeared into the distance. He felt a quiet ache, but also peace. He knew now that saving someone was not about holding on forever. It was about helping them stand on their own. As the sun dipped low, he returned to his work, changed forever by the lesson she had taught him. Far down the road, the woman paused and looked ahead. The pain was still part of her story, but it was no longer the whole story. She took a deep breath and kept walking. And this time, she chose to live.